MK Alagiri has a reputation of running a ministry in absentia. Preferring to spend his time in his pocket borough of Madurai, Alagiri has managed to duck responsibility of running a ministry which affects millions of farmers. But his willful neglect has caused a massive loss in terms of lives and in terms of taxpayer money. The Union Minister of Chemicals and Fertilizers is being indicted by none other than his junior minister Shrikant Jena. Tonight, we reveal one of the key reasons why farmers are killing themselves on one hand, while the subsidies meant for them are lining up private profits. Ashish Khaitan with this Headlines Today National Exclusive.
This is a Headlines Today investigation that unmasks those stealing from India's real Aam Aadmi, the farmer. Hundreds of whom commit suicide every year, unable to make ends meet, as rising input costs make farming unviable. Why are subsidies rising and so are prices? At the heart of this Headlines Today investigation is willful neglect on the part of Chemical and Fertilizer Minister MK Alagiri, as officials in his ministry allow private companies windfall profits at the cost of the farmer. Are subsidies meant for farmers or profiteers? At a more macro level, our investigation lays bare the reason why subsidies fail to reach the targeted masses, even as these doles continue to disfigure the fiscal deficit and edge us closer to a ratings downgrade. Should you not be held responsible for taking the nation towards economic disaster? UPA 2 has seen a tenfold increase in the fertilizer subsidy bill, but the price at which fertilizers are sold to farmers has been escalating at a staggering pace. Today, fertilizers have become prohibitively expensive for farmers, causing widespread distress in rural areas.
I, Shrikant Jena, do swear in the name of God.
The issue of ongoing loot in the fertilizers sector has been brought to Chemical and Fertilizer Minister Alagiri's notice by none other than the Minister of State for Fertilizers, Shrikant Jena.
Between March and August 2012, Jena wrote as many as 5 internal notes highlighting the issues of patent profiteering and pocketing of fertilizer subsidy by fertilizer companies. But forget taking the necessary steps to stop this massive loot and improve the farmers' plight. Alagiri didn't even seem it necessary to acknowledge Jena's notes.
On 17/7/2012, Jena wrote, the government has been releasing subsidy for the benefit of farmers so that retail prices remain at reasonable levels and there is no runaway increase in retail prices. The decontrol in retail prices does not imply that the companies are at their free will to gain undue profits at the cost of poor farmers. Companies are pocketing 1/3 of total subsidy released for farmers. In the same note, Jena suggested that fertilizer companies were pocketing roughly 1/3 of the total subsidy released for the farmers. Jena gave empirical evidence to support his claim. In June 2012, the fertilizer companies were selling 1 metric ton of DAP fertilizer for 25,000 rupees in the market. Additionally, they were taking a subsidy of 14,300 rupees per metric ton from the government. But in the same period, the imported price of DAP was 31,900 rupees. Jena wrote that after factoring the port and distribution charges, the companies were acquiring around 4,500 to 5,000 rupees per ton. In the case of MOP fertilizer, Jena suggested that companies were pocketing roughly 5,500 rupees of subsidy per ton. On August 3rd, 2012, Jena again wrote that the companies were making very high profits by selling the fertilizers at unreasonably high prices.
No steps have been taken by Alagiri. The question is, what is stopping the DMK minister from taking the necessary correctives? Is it possible for the private fertilizer companies to go on making huge profits at the expense of poor farmers without the blessing from the top. In New Delhi, this is Ashish Khetan for Headlines Today.
Junior Minister Shrikant Jena wrote 5 internal notes to MK Alagiri in 2012 alone, each one pleading Alagiri to stop companies from profiteering at the expense of poor farmers. The junior minister especially flagged an instance where private companies were trying to dump excess stocks of fertilizers during the months of January-March 2012 to avail of higher rates of subsidy prevailing at that time. But despite Jena's objections, Alagiri's department allowed the private players to go ahead. Jena said this specific instance alone cost the exchequer a whopping 1,000 crore rupees. Take a look at this.
In 2012 alone, Jena fired at least 5 internal notes to Alagiri. In each case, he was greeted with silence from the other end. It began with a note early last year, in which Jena made a dramatic claim. We now tell you how, in one go, the exchequer lost 1,000 crore rupees. Despite Jena's repeated SOS, Alagiri allegedly didn't lift a finger to stop this hemorrhaging of the taxpayers' money. It's the kind of money that can build a highway or a dam for farmers. Instead, fertilizer prices kept rising, driving farmers to suicide. Then early in 2012, Jena alerted Alagiri to a specific order passed by his officials. It laid bare his ministry's collusion with private companies to get more subsidies than they were entitled to. Jena pointed out that in early 2012, the government was expected to reduce fertilizer subsidy in tune with the falling international prices. Many companies devised a plan to use this to their advantage. They sought the release of large amounts of fertilizer stocks in the market despite it being a lean farming season. Once the stocks were moved, the companies would become entitled to the subsidy prevailing at that time. But before they could do that, they needed an official go-ahead from Alagiri's department.
Jena wrote to the department that the proposed movement of fertilizers was aimed to get fat subsidies and thus should not be allowed. But to his shock, Jena found that the department had already issued the orders.
Aghast at the blatant nexus between the ministry and private companies, Jena on the 19th of March 2012 wrote, "The fertilizer industry has not been able to service the demand of subsidized fertilizers during peak requirement season, leading to black marketing of fertilizers in the field. This has led to a burden on the farmers and consequently a loss to the government. Now in lean season, it seems that some parts of the industry are contracting P&K fertilizers to take advantage of falling international prices." Once again, Jena's pleas fell on deaf ears. Neither Alagiri nor his officials working under him acknowledged or responded to his notes. On the 17th of July 2012, Jena again wrote a note regarding stock position of P&K fertilizers at the retailer-dealer level in various states, with the requirement of clearing the existing stock first at prices of March 2012, and also to put a check on companies importing and marketing P&K at unduly high prices, was sent on the 15th of June 2012. It also cautioned the department against issuing of supply chain for P&K fertilizers for the next 2 or 3 months. However, no response has been received from the department till date. The junior minister noted that dispatching extremely high volumes of fertilizers at a time when it was not required for consumption was done to claim higher subsidy rates notified by the government for the year 2011-2012 as compared to that for 2012-2013.
The opposition has often labelled Alagiri as a perpetually absentee minister. It is alleged that Alagiri is not regular at cabinet meetings, nor does he take interest in ministerial work. Now the Headlines Today investigation shows that Alagiri is running the ministry as his private fiefdom. Even as farmers across the country are reeling under the rising price of fertilizers, a nexus between private companies and corrupt officials is dictating government's fertilizer policy. In New Delhi, this is Ashish Khetan for Headlines Today.
5 notes written by the junior minister to MK Alagiri. We've got some of those copies with us. Headlines Today's editor investigations Ashish Khetan has been piecing the story together over the last several days. He's joining me in the studio. Welcome, Ashish. We've also got my colleague Rukmini Vishwanath. She's joining us at this time. What we'll do quickly is put together for our viewers what these numbers really mean. How is it that MK Alagiri is perpetuating this loot? Take a look at this. Rukmini, take it away.
Well, let's quickly break down for you, according to Srikanth Jana's report, how the fertilizer industry is really keeping the prices high despite the massive fertilizer subsidies that they have been continuously receiving. Now, according to Jana's report, at least 14,000 farmers have killed themselves since 2011. They've been reeling under several problems. This has been another one of those huge problems that has weighed on the farmers. Jana's report also cites this example. This is the kind of loss to the exchequer that is being caused as a result of the fact that prices are being kept up, high up despite the fertilizer subsidy. Now, about 1,000 crores per single order. That's what Jana said. That was a previous graphic that you just saw. 1,000 crores of loss to the exchequer is being caused just by a single order. 100,000 crores is what Jana says is going to be the overshooting of the subsidy estimates as far as the budget is concerned. Srikanth Jana, the Minister of State for Chemicals and Fertilizers, red flagged this issue to Alagiri. He has to respond. He has not responded yet. Remember, this is the same Srikanth Jana who actually stormed into the DMK cabinet meeting in July 2012 and raised this very issue again. He protested against his own ministry raising urea prices. At that time too, Alagiri was stumped. In fact, the DMK had asked for the ouster of Srikanth Jana, saying he should be sacked. Prime Minister did not take any action then. And this time, once again too, interestingly, all this has been happening under the Prime Minister's watch. One would imagine that the Prime Minister's office would have kept a closer eye on the DMK given the A. Raja episode. But this time too, it seems that the Prime Minister's office has been letting this happen and not really acted on this particular issue. Clearly, there are a lot of questions that the government needs to answer.
Several questions that MK Alagiri needs to answer. Questions also about the Prime Minister being embarrassed once more by another senior minister from Mr. Karunanidhi's party. Joining us on the show this evening is former Finance Minister Mr. Yashwant Sinha. So you're seeing this headlines today, investigation essentially arising out of letters written by Srikanth Jana, the junior minister in the fertilizer department. He is writing to Alagiri saying that the fertilizer subsidy is not benefiting farmers, it's lining up private profits. Despite 5 letters being written in less than 12 months, MK Alagiri choosing not even to respond, not even to acknowledge these letters. What do you make of this, sir?
No, clearly, it's a scandal of magnanimous, great magnitude. And if the junior minister was continuously writing to the senior minister and trying to warn him of the great corruption in this matter which was going on, and then for the central minister, the senior minister not to respond, is a matter of great concern. This government has been indulging in one scam after another, and in all this, the Prime Minister has been fully complicit, because he should have known. Fertilizer industry is one industry where the subsidy has been transferred to the fertilizer factories, and this has been crying out for reform. But unfortunately, in the last 9 years, this government has done nothing to reform the fertilizer sector, with the result that this massive corruption has taken place. Now, therefore, I would immediately demand that a CBI investigation into the matter be initiated and the guilty be brought to book. Clearly, Mr. Alagiri is fully involved in this.
Also, Mr. Sinha, this is Ashish Khetan here. We have letters written by NDA chief ministers, letters written by Shivraj Singh Chauhan, by Nitish Kumar. They have written to the Prime Minister. They also wrote to Alagiri and the Fertilizer Ministry, and they have been flagging this issue for the last year and a half. And they have been complaining that the fertilizers are becoming exorbitantly expensive for the farmers to afford, and the farmers in their states are really under distress. But I wonder why the BJP as an opposition party and the BJP MPs have not made enough noise or raise this issue of immense importance for the farmers of the country in the parliament? Why there has been no debate initiated by the opposition in the parliament? Why the opposition has not tried to hold the Prime Minister accountable? Because I understand Alagiri most of the times he's either absent from the parliament or he keeps mum in the parliament. But why the opposition has not tried to pin down the government on such a core issue?
Sir, I was telling you, just hold on. It is not true that members of the parliament have not raised the issue. The Bihar MPs have created quite a ruckus in Lok Sabha. I remember it because I have been present in Lok Sabha when they have been raising the fertilizer issue. They have been bringing out how Bihar has been discriminated, how fertilizer is not available, how corruption is taking place in this whole thing. The problem is that when this kind of issue is raised, it does not get covered in the media.
No, but we are covering it, Yashwantji. The fact is that we put out a massive investigation. I don't think you can generalize and make it seem as if the entire media is guilty of ignoring this critical issue, because we put it on the top of our 9 o'clock broadcast. We've invited you. We've got Devinder Sharma joining us from Chandigarh as well. Before I let you go, Yashwantji, I just want you to explain to our viewers what you think are the next logical steps. Very clearly, there is a loot. There is a stink which has been uncovered. Who has benefited, to what extent is not known yet. What do you think the Prime Minister should do after this Headlines Today broadcast tonight? Prime Minister should immediately order a CBI investigation in the matter. Let the truth come out and let the guilty be punished.
Also, if I can just ask one more final question, Mr. Sinha. The same junior minister, Jena, who has now put so many dissent notes against his own minister, senior minister, has also been saying in public that there is a massive diversion of urea, which is highly subsidized, which is going on in Gujarat. And he has said this often on record, and he has complained about this, that the state government, the state government of Gujarat is not taking effective steps to prevent the diversion of urea for private industries. So, I mean, the subsidized urea for which the taxpayers are footing the bill is being diverted to industries in the state of Gujarat. And Jena has been saying this and complaining about this in public and saying that your Chief Minister, Narendra Modi, is not doing anything about it.
So you ask this question to Narendra Modi.
Okay.
Let Narendra Modi or somebody from Gujarat answer. I can't answer on his behalf because I don't have the facts.
Sure, but you're saying that on the back of the letters that have been written by Junior Fertilizer Minister Shrikant Jena, a CBI investigation not to be ordered. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, for joining us tonight, thank you very much. I want to go across to Devinder Sharma. He's been going through very carefully all the details that we are putting out before our viewers. Mr. Sharma, what do you make of the fact that MK Alagiri is not responding to Shrikant Jena's letters? But what Ashish Khaitan's story does not do is prove in any way that MK Alagiri benefited financially. Very clearly, there was this huge bungle because thousands of crores of rupees went to private pockets when they shouldn't have. The government should have come down. But what we don't know yet is who benefited and to what extent.
Well, I think you have said it all, because if the minister is quiet to the bungling, the huge bungling that has taken place, Absolutely. It is quite obvious that he has a vested interest in protecting those who are indulging in that loot. But I think first and foremost, I think one must compliment the junior minister, Mr. Jena. I think he has done a remarkable job, because I haven't seen many ministers standing up and bringing up these kinds of laws in their own system, because they will all come and say, no, everything is fine. You don't have to say we are working and we are trying to investigate and so on and so forth. But here is a minister who really stood up, and I think commendable job done by Mr. Jena. Now, the interesting part here is that, suddenly, as your report mentioned, last year, the price in March of phosphatic fertilizer, incidentally, we import about 80 to 90% of our phosphatic fertilizers. As far as potash fertilizer is concerned, we import 100% of our potash, which is about 6 million tons we import every year. In case of phosphatic fertilizer, it's about 11 to 12 million tons. We have it, we need it in this country. Now, interestingly, the price, per bag of 50 kilos, was 960 rupees in the month of March. By June, it jumps to 1200 rupees. And this phenomenal rise, there's no reason why it should have risen to that level, because the imports were made earlier. And those imports came at a cheaper price, and then the companies have made profits. That's what I think Jena is also trying to say, by selling it at a higher price. And even now he is saying that there should be a stop you should stop the process for 2 months, try to ascertain as to where the earlier stocks are going, and then to draw up another inventory, and then to say what cost the farmer should be paying.
Okay.
And I think he has very rightly worked out.
Give me a moment.
Yeah,
We've just got some information coming in that the fertilizer ministry has finally put out a clarification. We've been chasing them for the last several days. It's only now, after the headlines to this story has gone out, that a clarification has come from the Fertilizer and Chemical Ministry, and I'm going to quote from this. A statement that's been put out now by the ministry says that the change in the subsidy regime was a cabinet decision which in fact brought windfall profits to private companies. The ministry's statement admits that the government gave in to sustained lobbying by fertilizer companies. This is very interesting. And that the same lobbying is now clamoring for urea decontrol. The statement also says that an international cartel is jerking up prices of fertilizers. Ashish, from what I can make of this statement from the fertilizer ministry, Alagiri trying to distance himself, saying that the entire cabinet is involved, is not just my fault.
Absolutely, Rahul. This is actually not a statement which has been put out by the fertilizer ministry. This is what a very senior official, when I was chasing Alagiri and his office for their version of the story, a very senior official I met this morning, and he gave me this version as the official version on the condition that I won't quote him. And he said that Mr. Alagiri actually was opposing the nutrient-based subsidy policy which was introduced sometime in April 2010, which he says is primarily responsible for this profiteering and rent-seeking by companies. And he says that Alagiri, in his individual capacity and as minister, opposed this policy tooth and nail, and he wrote letters to the Prime Minister. He wrote letters to the then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee. But the fertilizer company and the lobby of fertilizer companies, they lobbied with the Finance Ministry, and they got a tailor-made policy, the policy which would suit the private companies, made in their favor. So this is what he told me on behalf of Alagiri, on behalf of the ministry, on the condition that we won't quote him.
Alagiri himself is in his farmhouse in Madurai. We've been trying to chase him down. He refuses to come out and face our cameras. Mr. Alagiri, if you're watching this broadcast, and I'm told on good authority that you're aware that we are putting out this story and you're keen on following what's happening, I suggest that you meet our correspondent Priyamvada when she tries to get in touch with you tomorrow. We'd be very keen on carrying your response on this story as well. Because what we are seeing Alagiri do, Mr. Devendra Sharma, is that he's trying to broad base this loot. He says that the entire cabinet was responsible. It wasn't a decision that I alone as fertilizer minister took.
Well, there is an element of truth here, Rahul, that the fertilizer industries have lobbied very hard to get into the nutrient-based subsidy scheme, which was started, as your colleague said, in 2010. But, the minister cannot wash his hands off, because he is the minister concerned now. And, if the mischief is happening the last 2 years when he was the minister, he has no reason to say that I am not responsible for it. What happened at 2010 was definitely a collective decision of the government. And I know Planning Commission played a very significant role in pushing that scheme. I remember I used to oppose that. I used to say this is not something that India requires. But in order to say that we need to reduce our subsidies, they went ahead with this scheme, trying to set the balance right. The balance has gone still more skewed in the process, because you have urea struck up at the prices struck up, whereas the prices of DAP and potash have zoomed, and so there is a kind of imbalance.
But what's very clear is about 1/3 of the subsidy, Ashish, is being misused. Now we need to track who is it who's benefiting, why is it the government is turning a blind eye, and what is Mr. Alagiri's role in
this? This is exactly what Jana has been demanding. He is calling for an exhaustive, comprehensive audit. He is saying that what is stopping the ministry from calling all the records of the companies which could justify the high price at which they are selling these fertilizers, and carry out an audit and find out where is this subsidy going. Well, you are footing 1 lakh crore rupees, Rahul, every year. 1 lakh crore rupees. Where is the money going? Why is the ministry not carrying out an audit? And I will tell you one more point. Last year, the CAG carried out an audit, not on this point, on some other points. And the CAG, on the first page of its report, which was tabled in the parliament, said that the Ministry of Fertilizers, Alagiri's ministry, did not cooperate in the audit process. They did not even participate in the exit conference. And unfortunately, even several reminders went unheeded.
Well, so there is a pattern here. It's not just Shrikant Jana.
No,
even to CAG, he's not responding. Very clearly, Mr. Prime Minister, there is a scam here. There is a stink of a scam. The CBI, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, has demanded should investigate to determine Who's making money? Why is it that Alagiri is not responding to CAG? Why is it that he's not responding to Shrikant Jena? There are questions being asked. Those answers must be found. I'm going to leave it over there. Ashish Khaitan will keep tracking the story, getting you more developments. Devendra Sharma wants to make a quick final word. I'm out of time, sir.
Yes, Rahul, regarding the urea, it's not this happening just now. Urea in 2008-2009 is very interesting. In 2008 was a normal year when we used in the Kharif season only 130 lakh tons of urea. In 2009 was a drought year and we used 330 lakh tons of urea. Now this is certainly impossible because in a drought year the urea product consumption should have come down.
Well, now it's for the government. It's for the government now to order a probe. If the Prime Minister and if Mr. Rahul Gandhi talks of weeding out corruption, ushering in a new era, here's a good opportunity to start. Facts have been laid out. Let's see how the government responds.